Welcome to Mile High Reefers. I'm Scott Anderson, and it's time to fix the Aquascape on this big 210-gallon tank. If you've been following my channel, you know that this tank has been through a crash over the last few months. It's mostly recovered. I've been wanting to fix this Aquascape for a long time, so now's a great opportunity to do it. This tank's been set up for about 5 years now, and it's been really cool to watch it grow. But if you'll notice, the Monties are grown clear to the top of the tank where I can't even see them. So this video is going to be way different than most aquascaping videos you see, because this video is about fixing the scape on an old tank. So this tank's 5 years old, it's been growing for 5 years, and now it's time to trim it back and make it cool again. To begin with, I had to get some supplies. Big thing I'm gonna need is super glue. This is just your regular gel type super glue. I buy it at the dollar store for $1. Unfortunately, this time they didn't have the 3-packs, so I gotta get by with the 2-packs. The 3-packs are an amazing deal. 3 packs of glue for $1. Any good gel super glue will do ya. There's plenty of good brands out there. I buy this stuff because it's local and it's cheap. Like I said, this stuff costs $1. The only downside is when you go to the dollar store and you buy all the glue, people look at you funny. I absolutely love the Aquascape on this tank. I think it looks fantastic. So the goal with this rescape isn't to redo the Aquascape. It's to fix the problems and keep the good. So really, there's a lot of good here. So we want to make as few mistakes as possible and move as few coral as possible and fix the major problems. We're mainly going to be focusing on Montiporas and leathers, and fingers crossed we don't cause ourselves too many problems. But let's face it, we're re-aquascaping. We're gonna break some coral. To begin with, I had to come up with a plan. And if you look at this tank, you can see right in here that it all kind of curves in around that big brain. The fact is for the last 5 years, I've been cutting Montipora around that brain, or whatever coral's been in that spot, to keep light on it. But you can see this big purple Monty, it's grown to the surface, it's absolutely massive, and I need to do something about it. So I want to take that whole purple Monty out of there. My goal is to get out in one piece, just to get a good picture of it. But you can see we've got, in here, we've got this kind of stepladder look to the old Monties that are there. So what I want to do is try to get this big piece out without damaging the stuff down below and see what those steps will look like. Because if we get lucky, we've already got a nice staircased Aquascape ready to go. So it might be as easy as removing that big coral, and then we'll have this nice staircase area. And then we've got this big red Monty here that shadows everything down below, and we're gonna have to redo that. And I think we'll probably end up taking a Monty off of there and putting something else on there like a Passalapora that doesn't grow out these big plating structures that shade as much. It'd be nice to be able to fill this kind of space in with coral because I have a lot of empty space that I can't fill because it's shadowed. In back, my Monties are just overgrown. So this big colony in here was hit hard in the tank crash. The one behind it is overgrowing it. It's gonna smother it, it's gonna kill it. I love this colony, and it will regrow and look great someday. But for that to happen, I've just gotta trim this guy back. My goal is to do as little damage as possible because I love this waterfall look that it has to it, but I need to get it away from that big coral. And I love the fact that it kind of have this floor to ceiling look, so I wanna try to save as much of this as possible. Next are the leathers. I just gotta figure out a rearrangement for these guys so that they can all be big and open. Problem is I have a big dark hole right here that I need to fill or do something so I can get a coral in this area that I just can't do anything with right now. So we'll try to figure out something to do here. One problem I've ran into in the past is this rock here is loose and stuff tends to fall and could potentially damage the clam. So I gotta be super careful of that. And then if I get time, I want to get all of these pallies off of the overflow. They actually look kind of cool on there, but they're these green pallies. They take over, they look bad. My goal is long-term to eradicate them from this tank. They're more of a pest coral if you ask me. I like the look, So maybe we'll put some utter chaos in that back wall. I've got a bunch. I've cleared the two big corals, so basically all of this was taken up by one big purple Montipora and that red Monty. I've got them all out of here. And I think this kind of staircased old dead Montipora look is gonna give me some really awesome places to put coral. So I've kind of cleaned it up. I think our height looks pretty good from the surface of the water. I think that's all fantastic. The only problems I'm finding is I've got a bunch of pallies in back that we're gonna have to get out. Those are gonna happen last. At the end of this, I'm gonna pull as many pallies and those green mushrooms out of here as possible. I tried filming the full Reefscape and it just turned out to be too big of a pain. It was really slowing me down and I was getting the camera wet. I was trying to dry off between. It just wasn't working. So I gave up on trying to film the Reefscape, and here it is a few days later. My goal was to leave the Euphilia garden alone and not touch it. I was kind of expecting stuff to break and fall in there, but it worked really well. I did add these Duncans in here that have been sitting in the basement forever. They look really good. The only problem is they're touching my frog spawn. I'm not sure if that's gonna be a problem, so I'm just gonna watch them. If anything starts getting burned, I'll have to move them. Part of the reason I wanted to rescape this tank was to fix my leathers. They were growing into each other. They're causing problems, especially this toadstool leather back here. Right now, it's hanging down and back. I was expecting to kind of rearrange all of this, but what I decided was to try to glue this guy back in the shade with the hopes that it's gonna push up and out and get the light and fill this space right here. This is kind of my easiest, best solution to fill space and provide for the best health of the coral. Now, whether that's actually gonna work, only time will tell. What this toadstool is doing now, kind of hanging down, is pretty common for a freshly moved leather coral. So we'll give it a little time and see if it kind of goes up and out like these two. With the Monties, the goal was to take that big, massive purple Monty out and see what these shelves looked like down below. Now, I got really lucky. Like, all of this old coral that could be weak, could be brittle, it actually was in decent shape. So I was able to lift that whole coral off, and what I thought could end up being a full rescape of really this section of tank ended up already being done for me. It was awesome. So all of this was already cut out from years of fragging. It was brilliant. So all of this is old growth, and basically I'm just resetting the tank to where it was. I think it's gonna work out really well. So from a scaping perspective, that was pretty cool. Now I want you to think about the colors right now. So this tank is coming out of some problems. So Monty colors aren't as good as they could be. Plus, right now I'm shooting under whiter light just because it's so much easier to film under. This huge Monty colony is one I bought years ago on my birthday. It's a coral I absolutely loved, and honestly I almost lost it in the crash. You can see how bad it is. When I did the rescape, it broke, so I kind of glued the piece back in the center. It didn't glue back in a very natural looking way, but basically the Monty is spread out. I've got plenty of live Monty, so hopefully it'll regrow and give me that nice kind of cone plating shape that it used to have. It's not pretty now. Hopefully it'll fix itself. So as far as the Aquascape went, I got off super easy. Like, the bones of the reef were good, the plan went to plan, so basically everything worked. So the reef looks much closer to original than I expected. But hey, that's a good thing. I was expecting to do a lot of work because I thought stuff was gonna break. So this is a good thing. So this allowed me to have a bunch of open extra space to add a bunch of corals that were downstairs in the frag tank and kind of rescape. I still got some more corals I need to put in here, but for now, let's take a look at some of the new inhabitants. One of the corals I've had for years is this Pectinia. I've been wanting to put it in this tank forever. I've never had a place for it. They can be somewhat aggressive, and it's a really cool Pectinia. Yes, it's not a valuable Pectinia, but it kind of has this purplish, almost copper look under the whiter lights, and then it's got that kind of green look on the inside of its mouth. I really like this Pectinia, even though it's nothing special. So I found a really nice place for it, kind of tucked in back, and I think it's going to be fantastic here. This rock had a bunch of these button polyps, which are really going to green up. These are actually pretty cool pallies. And then I also had a bunch of those teal pallies on there. Well, I got the teal pallies off. I put Palli grandis on there, which are just big, fat-headed pallies. I love the way they look. I'm happy to have a nice big colony in a prominent position in this tank. And it's not just colonies. Wherever I could fit frags in, I added new frags. Up top, I added some Pocillopora and bird's nest. So the goal is unlike a plating monty, which will grow out and shadow all the coral below it, these are gonna grow kind of more up and stay a little more confined to the structure. And if I'm a little more diligent keeping it fragged back, I should be able to keep everything below it lit. This was kind of part of the design here. I didn't want to put a plating monty here for that reason. So monties are one of my favorite corals, so I've added a few of them back. So this green one here is a nice undata. It's a little thicker, heavier growing monty, should do real well here. It won't plate out quite as much, won't be quite so shadowing. This kind of reddish stuff here is going to be more of a bright orange when it fully colors up. And that stuff will be much more plating, but it's real thin and easy to frag. And the stuff behind it, that purple, that's that big purple that was taking over everything. And next to it, slow burn, which I broke while moving it. It's readjusting to the new light. It looks fantastic under the blues. Under the whites, it's kinda meh. One of my favorite monties in this tank is this Atlantis pink tip, and it's green with pink tips. It looks pretty cool, but when I took the coral above it out, it exposed this section to a much higher light than it's seen in the past. So that's actually pulling back and dying off. We'll have to see how much of this coral we end up losing. I've got plenty, so I'm not too worried about it, but this is so far the biggest loser. And now for the first time, I've actually got room to put my Hydnophora. Hydnophora is a beautiful coral. And this one's extra special because it's one I got from Jake Adams the first time I went to film his tank, so it's kind of a memorable piece to me. So I've got a nice open spot in the tank for it now. So I've got a place that it's not really gonna sting anything. It can grow and do its thing. Cool coral, glad it's in the tank. Next to it's this super green cabbage leather. It's much more neon under bluer lights, but it's a really cool piece and hopefully it'll take up a lot of this area. This stuff is just cool and super easy. On the overflows, I took the teal pallies off and I glued on Utter Chaos. Utter Chaos are super easy, they grow fast, they look amazing. So the goal is, eventually, this will all be covered in Utter Chaos. And then at the top of the other overflow, I glued on some watermelon zoas, so hopefully I can do the same trick. I love watermelon zoas. They're super cheap, they're pretty, they're super easy. Why not? So there we go. I took some big coral out, made room for lots of little pieces. Now I've got room to add more frags in the future. I can grow stuff out. I'm able to diversify, so I have different types of coral in the tank, and I'm able to get a lot of those frags in I couldn't before. This project was actually really weird. I mean, how often do you come up with a plan, looking at your tank, and you execute, and it basically goes exactly to plan? The plan ended up working brilliantly. I'm really happy with where it is. It's just, the Reefscape wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was gonna be. So I hope you guys like the way the tank looks now. It's gonna fill in. I've got more corals from the 29 gallon, and I've even got room to purchase new corals for this tank again. So thanks for watching this episode of Mile High Reefers. Like, comment, subscribe, and we're gonna fill up this tank.